there, this is Sherry Hayes with MomDelights.com. I'm the mom of 15, been homeschooling for 30 years, and today we're going to talk about homeschooling boys. Stay tuned, it's going to get interesting. So I've had a few viewers ask me about how I homeschool boys. Well, I've learned a lot over the years by trial and error, and I don't think I've always been the best at this. Now I have a lot of girls. I have 11 girls. I only had 4 boys, and they were kind of spaced out in between here and there. So I did see boys where they're kind of sandwiched in a whole bunch of girls. But I can tell you some observations, some things I wish I had done, some things I did with great success. And I hope that you can grab onto these. I hope they will stir you. Of course, always, always, always prayer, because every child is different. I mean, the things I tell you right now might be the total opposite of what you want to do with one of your sons. And that's totally okay. You do what God tells you to do, what that son needs. You do what you know that God's telling you to do for that child. But I can tell you some things that in general I've learned that I think are important. So today we're going to start. I'll show you my board. And on my board I have Homeschooling Boys, clear and direct, no fuzziness, exact expectations, non-emotional, respect the need for adventure, and encourage character through responsibility, and teach them civility. Okay, so hopefully that grabbed your attention right there, because we can't treat boys the same as girls. I mean, they're all human beings, and especially when they're little, there's not as much difference. Although you will tend to realize that boys tend to be more aggressive, they have more energy, and they're more direct, and sometimes they'll do wrong things right in front of you. And you're like, you know, you're doing something wrong. Yeah. And because they're not so sneaky. And I love girls. I love girls, but girls can be kind of like subterfuge, and there's, you know, a lot of interesting things. So girls are different. So one thing I want to tell you about boys when I talk about clear and direct. Boys do not do well with go clean your room. That's really not a good thing to say to a boy, because I notice this a lot with my boys. A girl you can by and large, now girls can do this too, but by and large, you send a girl and you say clean your room, they know what you mean. You mean make their bed, clean up the floor, hang up the clothes, that kind of thing, and get the trash out, okay? You know, they'll start. They might not like it. They might cry a little bit, but they know what they're supposed to be doing. If you put a boy in a messy room and say, clean this room, their brain is just going to totally shut down. Because they just see a lot of mess. They can't visualize how it would look clean. All they see is a lot of mess, and they can't make any sense of the confusion. Because they're not creative in that way. I have a son, and his sisters would tell him when he had a job and he was trying to say, you know, you've got to go to the Goodwill. We've got to help you get some clothes. Come on with us to the Goodwill. We'll help you shop for clothes. And so, you know, I used to buy his clothes at the Goodwill, but he didn't go with me. And if he did, he was like sitting there in a chair looking at a book. He did not want to be involved. So he took one step inside that Goodwill, and he looked, and all he could see was the confusion of all these different things that didn't go together. And he said, I'm not buying one thing in this whole store. And he stepped out and he never went back in. And that's because there was a lot of chaos, and he could not make sense of the chaos. So when you tell a boy, go clean your room, then all they're thinking is, I don't know how to make sense of this. And lots of times what we believe is them being defiant or not listening or not doing what we say is actually just a lot of confusion in their mind. Now, what you do instead is you say, okay, go into that room and find all the trash and put it in that trash can. They can do that. They will go and get all the trash in the room, and they will put it in the trash can. Then you can say, I want you to find all the shoes and put them in the line under your bed. They'll find the shoes, they'll put them in the line under the bed. You see what I'm saying? If you give them if you're direct, you say, okay, oh, I just don't know what to do with you. They'll go, what? If you say, I'm upset with you because you did not do your chores, they can get that. You understand? So when we come to homeschooling, all right, and we're saying, why didn't you get your schoolwork done? Well, that's like a big, vague, you know, whatever. If you say, why didn't you do this math page? Okay, I'm getting there. Why didn't you do this problem right here? They can do that. If you say, why didn't you write your numbers correctly? they can understand that. But if you say, you know, this page is messy, that is too vague. They're not going to be able to, you're just going to have a communication problem. You've got to spell it out and be direct, and don't say, when you're actually thinking something else. You have to say, I don't like what you did here. Oh, I like what you did here. I like this part and I like this part. You really did well here. But if you say, oh, some of it's good, some of it's bad, they don't understand that. You have to be very direct and specific. And don't expect them to read your emotions, right? Because they are not going to get that. Now, girls, we kind of like are intuitive. And you can like be very vague with a girl. You can't do that with a guy. You have to be specific. You have to be direct with your sense. Now, you start this when they're little. You start with chores, and you start with school. You say, we're going to do school. School means we're learning. Explain to them what that is. And sit down with them and say, now we're going to use these cards to learn the sounds of the letters. Explain what you're doing. Be direct. Be specific. And then they will be able to go with you. Now, sometimes they don't like being lorded over, and so we'll talk about it in a minute. Okay. So have exact expectations, be specific, and follow through. So if they're not doing something right and you're busy, stop what you're doing and, if you have an expectation that they're supposed to do X, Y, and Z and they don't get it done within the amount of time, make sure that you follow through and you say, well, I told you that if you didn't do X, Y, and Z that this would happen, so this is what's going to happen, but be non-emotional about it. Say, I'm sorry, but these are just the consequences, and that will speak to them, rather than going in there and saying, oh, you didn't do it again? That is so, I'm so tired of you doing this every day. Or saying, like, one day you're really hot on the topic and and then the next day you just totally forget and don't even notice. You have to be consistent, you have to be specific, and you have to be direct. Guys will thrive in that kind of environment. Now, when I'm talking about specific, I also mean, like, I use a lot of printables now. But I used to use more composition books, and that will save you a lot of money, and it'll be wonderful for your homeschool. However, with a boy, you need to number each page, and you need to tell them what page they're supposed to write their work on. Otherwise, they will open in the middle of the book, and they will put their work right in the middle of that book. Yeah. And then the next lesson, they might go in the front of the book and do that lesson, and they will be all scattered, and you'll be so surprised and shocked when you go to check their work. It's all crazy, okay? But if you say, take page 1 of your composition book and write a narration on that page, or if you can take the time to write at the top exactly what you expect on that page, and then tell them, or when you make the SOPs and the assignment sheets, if you can watch my video on that, those are so extremely important with a boy, especially if you're going to teach them. You need check marks. Young kids in general need them. My daughters need them, but boys especially. They need to know specifically what you did on that, what you expected, and there's a check mark, and it's going to be checked, and they're going to have to do it. Those expectations will help them, and it'll help them develop good habits in their lives if they know that they have to take the assignment and follow through, because there's going to be an expectation of them completing and doing a good job. So these are all habit training things that guys need. Now, boys are different too, because they need some adventure. Okay, it's just fine to learn about, how Megan felt when her dog died and all that kind of stuff. But what they want to know is, okay, so what happened in this battle? And oh wow, and you know what I'm saying? They need some adventure. See, I just said, you know what I'm saying, because I'm talking to women. See, and we are intuitive, and I expect you to understand what I just said. With a guy, I would have to say, well, what I mean is they need a story that has some kind of consequence to the world or to other people, and they need some action. So when you give them stories, make sure there's some action and there are consequences to people's action, and that there's a resolving of a problem. Because if you give them a story that just has a problem with no resolution, they will totally lose interest. These are men of action. They are going to be men of action. They're going to want to make an impact of the world. They don't want to hear about people who don't know how to make an impact. That's a waste of their time. It's a waste of ink on the paper to them, okay? You've got to show some impact on the world or something. G.A. Henty is perfect for this. R.M. Ballantyne. James Otis is pretty good, and there are other writers that they will really thrive on, okay? And if you, G.A. Henty is totally historical, so it's like a win-win, right? And I'm doing a video about how to take a historical novel and turn it into a language arts lesson. So McGuffey's is great because McGuffey's has a lot of that in it, although he doesn't deal with feelings, okay? He was a guy, and he taught a lot of guys how to read, so you won't have to worry about that, okay? So McGuffey's will be great for guys. But like your historical novels and things like that, you'll want to make sure that it's got something interesting information that impacts the world in a positive way, okay? And your boys need to learn character through responsibility. Okay, so when you are homeschooling and if you need help, you make them your knight in shining armor. Make them your valiant person that can help them, and don't worry about overburdening them. Now, sometimes, of course, every parent could have the temptation to overburden and relying on a child when they just want to be lazy. That's sin. Stop that. Okay, but don't be afraid if you have a necessity in your life and you need your son's help to help you to do something. Don't be afraid to give him some responsibility. He will rise to the occasion, and it will develop character in him. Men love challenges, and they love altruism. I don't care who they are. A young man loves altruistic ideas. They love to be idealistic about what work is and what ethics. They love that stuff. And on that line, what you want to do is you want to teach them civility. Okay? Civility is nothing more than the golden rule. Do unto others the way you would have them do unto you. And also Jesus said, whoever wants to be great must be servant of all. And so it sounds kind of flowery and kind of girlish. Like if you taught them Emily Barnes etiquette, they would go, right. But thankfully, someone very famous and very important to American history, that's George Washington, he wrote out Rules of Civility. And if you read through those, they are amazing. Now, George Washington was a man's man, taught himself how to do surveying, went all through the wilderness surveying this man's huge tract of land when he was like 15, 16 or something like that. And he fought in the French and Indian War, was shot at numerous times. I mean, this is a man's man, and yet he wrote Rules of Civility when he was a young boy. And so this is definitely not a girl's thing. This is how to be gentlemanly. And if you go through those Rules of Civility, there are actually people that have put free stuff, free copywork online that you can find. I'll try to link some below. And you can have your son do some copywork. You can talk about being a valiant knight in this world and what knights did. I mean, what was their purpose? Their purpose was to be Christ-like to the world. So if you take all that stuff and you teach them not to be rude to people and think it's manly. Teach them that to be kind to others is actually a very manly thing to do, and to give yourself as a sacrifice for others is definitely a manly thing to do. Teach them these rules of civility. Don't make them girls. Don't try to do that, because men are amazing things, and we need men in this world. They are amazing, wonderful people. But at the same time, don't let them think that being manly means being harsh, rude, and mean, because it doesn't. That's not the pattern that Jesus left us. So when you put those things all together, then I think that you'll be pretty successful. Most guys like math and do pretty well in math, so you shouldn't have much problem with that. Just like I said, be very specific. Don't overburden. Try to make sure that while you are expecting them to do their work, don't give them too much of the same thing over and over. That kills anybody. Kills girls, kills me. So I hope these things help you and give you kind of an idea of a direction you can go. And if you have any more questions, make sure you put them below in the comments, and I'll read them, and I'll try to make another video to answer some more questions. All right, well, you have a wonderful day. Don't forget to like and subscribe.